Today is the 9th of Shaban, 1439, and I'd like to continue with my quotes and notes from the Whirling Dervishes by Ira Friedlander with Chapter 4. And Chapter 4, the Tekke, the Divine Factory of the Whirling Dervishes. So I kept the title the same in my quotes and notes from 13 years ago. The worker is the god, not in a demiurge sense. The workshop is where one worships. The veil is what the living have between them and the unseen. The work is all of creation except the God, by which we know God. And also reinterpreted, you can say, not referring to this poem, but the demiurge is a worker, but a worker with what was, not a true creator. But people mistake certain beings as creators. But anyways, because it's talking about the worker being hidden in the shop. And the Whirling Dervish dance was a remembrance for as follows, a dhikr. Until 1945, when Kemal Ataturk outlawed it. The dance of remembrance of God in motion was their initiation. It was their way to ecstasy. And, of course, that's how we live, right? Our worship, our acts, our life is a series of initiation. You don't have to pay some guru or... It's like the Quran is 114 suwar. And a suwar is a rank, a step. So even those who memorized it, you're living up to your degrees. Your 114 degrees, are you? Your 6,232 signs. I think that's one of the numberings. But the letters are agreed with. But anyways, there's various things to think about. Before 1925, there were 5 active dervish schools. Mevlevi techies at that point were required consent of the parents of those under 18. So rather than you reach the age of accountability, they were more interested in, we don't get sued, or we don't, maybe not get sued, but, modernist ideas of 18 and 21 that don't, have to do with independent morality and the ability to choose otherwise. But starting people with children in their education is important. So as soon as they're able to learn and perform in ceremonies, that's why not. An older initiate, just like in the AA, or the SS, or maybe it has a different name nowadays. They show the 3 dots, the theosophical sort of way of thinking, that somebody higher, somebody further along in the process of the degrees trains the other person. So in this way, it's a younger person being trained by an older person. The remembrance of God and receiving the hat, because they wear the fez. Then you swear allegiance to the sheikh, if you're in a mystical order, and choose whether or not to do a retreat for 1,000 days, a Chili retreat, and become a Didi in the Mevlevi order, or a Muhip, an initiate who doesn't perform a retreat and doesn't reside in the Tekke, but comes every day for the training. If the choice was retreat, the initiate was brought to the Ahchi, the cook, and given his first test. Now, some of these tests are, except kind of where it's like, you're the new guy, it's your turn to sweep the floor, it's your turn to pass out the food or something. It's like, really? People say, he's just too overwhelmed by the talk that he couldn't, so he wasn't ready for the teachings. It's like, no, he was ready for the teachings. He just wasn't ready to take his turn. You're the new guy, so you clean up or fix food or something. I've done that myself. So he was to remain in the matba, the kitchen as it's called, for 3 days with no sleep and no movement except the 5 times a day prayer, except using the bathroom and eating what food he was given. And the period without talking was called the Nev Niyaz, so the new initiate. After 3 days, the initiate was taken to the hammam, a Turkish bathhouse, to bathe and get shaven. He's given a chili tenursi, a black dress to wear throughout the retreat. And so if they mean shaving the face and stuff, that's kind of, and immodesty in the bathhouse, that's also not an Islamic practice. Although some people could attribute, in Islamic culture, we all bathe together. But typically it's like going to a spa of, bathhouses, the spas of. But the 18 rule has nothing to do with any sort of biological or religious law. For both agree capacity for accountability should peak a little after the onset of adulthood or reproductive age. This rule comes from Western political pressure due to the retardation of accountability in the West. I mean, really, 30 is the new 12, right? The word achi, after the words, the Didi gave him a zikr, prayer to say after the chores, because Sufism, as I've pointed out before, comes from the remembrance of people doing their work. A lot of Sufism does anyways. And the kazanji, the large pot for the cooking the soup or the pilaw, the Didi took over teaching the initiate. The Kazanji Didi oversaw the maintenance of the Tekke and assigned the initiate to kitchen and cleaning duties. During the day, an initiate must learn to be a samazin, a whirler. There's a song. I don't know if that has anything to do with the Whirling Dervishes. That's just the name of the song. And work with the Samazin Bashi, the dance master. If the initiate wanted to learn to play music, he'd have to be given the permission of his last 2 initiators. The Chili initiate was given a bed in the matba, small room, usually shared with 2 or 3 other young initiates. After Maghrib, sunset prayers, he stayed in the central part of the Tekke to listen to a lecture by the sheikh or readings from the Mathnawi. If the initiate was termed a Chili Kirmak, he had to begin his chili again. If the chili could be broken by any infringement of the rules of the Tekke, disobedience or failure to report to the main Tekke for the evening class, so as long as you have to be in the main, you got to be in the main center for the evening class, and that's a good time to give talks, not after the dusk prayers, but in between the dusk and the evening prayer. The Tablighi brothers kind of do the same too. The Chili initiate had to complete the Muqtadi Muqabalesi, the beginner's ceremony, before being allowed to even view the main sema whirling dance performed every Thursday night. This is a board with a nail in it with the initiates practice spinning on. Because obviously you want to be able to spin around the nail without messing up your step, and if you step on the nail, I hope that's not it. Or maybe it's to, the board. Before learning a lesson, you cross your arms and say, Avala, with God's permission. A muhit, the lover, is one who doesn't do the retreat. He is allowed to see the sema and to roll in it. It can take a year perfecting the beginner's ceremony before the Chili initiate may turn in the sema. A lot of these practices, you gotta, when you first, you may flop and fall down and whatnot. Some African groups and whatnot that we're cool with that, but, you may want to sit down and not be part of the public ceremony leading the thing and whatnot until you're adapt enough that you can flop like a rag doll without losing your cool or losing your balance or whatever. One completes it for 3 days. Sweets are brought to the guy. Then he's allowed to wear white garments in the Sema. The Cherokee and some of the Native American tribes would do a 3-day fast, and there's 3-day fast of silence. Islam forbids being silent to as long as your brothers are allowed to, your Muslim brothers and your family and stuff are able to talk to you. You shouldn't go 3 days without talking to people. And then he can wear the white garments in the Sema. The last Chidi Didi was Osman Didi. A Chili may remain in retreat in the Tekke, but that would mean not getting married because women were not allowed to live in the Tekke. Just like the masjid, it's a spiritual center, and certain things aren't allowed that are allowed in your regular life. And Islam is forbidden monasticism, but Sufism kind of deviates from that at points. Or you could live outside of it. And if you live outside the Tekke, you choose whether or not you're going to take part in the Thursday night, the Juma night ceremonies. Sometimes the women went to another room to whirl without costume. So the men have special garments, the women, they wear their regular clothes, just like Hajj. The men wear special garments, women, they just wear a plainer version of their regular clothes, or if they're wearing that plain anyways. There have been women who were sheikhs. Were they sheikhs of other women, like in the Islamic world, that women lead each other in prayer, and they even lead their family members when no other male, of close relation would be present. But anyways. But a dervish has to do something other than just be a monk. If they're crippled or something, they're crawling back and forth, maybe people will help them, but at least I haven't gone that far. Inshallah means if God wills. Seems to be the root of this saying. In Islam, getting married is a duty. We don't have Islamic monks either. We are to be in the middle path, Sharia. Working is a religious act in Islam. It is not right to take taxes away from the needy to pay for a priesthood. And 7 main stations in the order of the Mevlevis. The highest is Sheikh of the order. Under him is the Didi, the Nay Zinbashi, the Kadam Zinbashi, and Sema Zinbashi. The Kazandi Didi maintains the Tekke, and the Maidanji Didi acts as secretary to the sheikh. Only the initiates who have gone through the Chili are allowed to be initiated into these posts. In all the orders, the sheikhs are chosen by a group of 3, each from a different order. 1 from the Mevlevis. So it's a hierarchy, but not entirely as self-interest, Kemal Ataturk reopened Jalaluddin's tomb as a museum 2 winters after it was closed, and he asserted it's a modern country, and a modern society has no time for dervish magic. Well, religion, magic being the art and science of religion, is, the sense that in a non-insult that should be used. It was December Saturday, during the final turn of the last Sema. The military police entered the Mevlevi Tekke in Uskudar and ordered it closed. And they stopped and cried and put on their street clothes and walked out. And their costumes went out of use. The locks were put on the doors, and people burnt candles on the locks. And dervish orders and established religious bodies not approved by the government were illegal. Those who want to do any right can do so in private, but not under the aegis of a organized religious body. So, secularism to the extreme, not just, we've secularized all our laws and we can change it whenever we want according to our own whims and the whims of society. no, no, we're enforcing, we don't want any new religions, and we don't want religious orders, and we want everything, even though everybody knows what it is, or can look up what it means if they don't. We want all the old services rendered into a fragmented translation. Well, a lot of things. If you say one sentence, you really want to say three, and so, and the beauty is lost in translation, so people want to say things in the original language, even the call to prayer translated some of these things. 3 decades ago, the Mevlevi Tekkes had yet to be reopened. For 28 years, there was no official dervish ceremony. In 1953, a small cinema was opened to the public in the Konya cinema. 2 whirled, 1 chanted Quran, 3 musicians played, 1 drummer, and there was 1 flute player. In 1954, it was the same. In 1955, they were allowed to wear their dervish hats. So there was a progress here. I mean, a few people meeting together do ritual. You're not allowed to wear Turkish style clothing. You have to wear you have to wear European and American style clothing, or you can't perform. It's like, I mean, who cares? Oh, they obviously cared. So in 1956, the Sema was moved to the library in Konya, and the ceremony was performed in Ankara, the capital of Turkey. During one of these first semas, the police got so upset because it looked like the old people were actually enjoying themselves. I mean, no, you can do these religious ceremonies, but don't get too into it, It's just for show. It's like, if it's just for show, it's worse than not doing it at all, right? The dervish is supposed to, when they do their rituals, have an invisible barrier around them that forms a non-awareness of what happens outside the ritual. And they could have, the whole Whirling Dervish could have originated from Pythagorean schools. Over 25,000 people come from all over the world every December to visit Konya and watch the Mevlevis dance on Jalal's Day of Union. So it's really grown from the few people, and Rasuhi Bekara broke from the Konya dervishes, claiming that it's not a real Sema, but a show for the tourist. Through his influence, there's a secret organization of floating skirts in London who perform the Sema whirling tenor and seke. The whirlers are both men and women, and, of course, as you find out in Russia, whether you're Muslim or whether you're one of the religions where they actually had proof and developed museums that say, a lot of stuff in the Bible is not literally true, and creationism, in Russia, after it was legal and stuff again, Christianity came back in a big way. Some of the places that empty masajid, as soon as the tourists showed up and they left the tourists alone doing their prayers and meeting with their family in an empty masjid, boom, they come back 5 years later filled. So, you suppress religion, it stays in the people. Christianity took over 1,000 years in some areas to become Christian majorities, and some of the faiths mixed into Christianity to the point that it's hard to tell sometimes what started with Christianity. Who was a Christian that that was treated as a saint, and who was an old god that was mixed into another story of a person, or maybe they were just, or a false god or whatever. So Rasuhi Bekara, I don't know how to pronounce Turkish, he got a set of a photographer that was causing disruptions in 1967. And a spokesman of the Tourist Association went up to the mic in the middle of the ceremony. This guy is not allowed to take part in these things anymore. The rest of them, said, the tourist present, press interference with religious practice isn't good. But the tourist ceremony wanted, we want a real Sema. But the problem was eventually fixed. By 1956, they had to move to a high school gymnasium, and Konya was starting to become a cultural center again. And my note here, the notes of the Pythagorean music are like the Jewish menorah, which has the sun in the middle and 3 planets on each side. The lower octave ascends to the solar sphere F through G and ascends to the zodiac sphere G major through F minor. The spheres before we get to the lunar sphere are Earth and water at 4/3, water at 3/2, fire and air at 4/3, and air at 3/2. Another way of putting this is the Earth to the moon is 1 tone. From the moon to Mercury is a half tone. From Mercury to Venus is 1/2 tone. From Venus to the Sun is a tone and a half. From the Sun to Mars is 1 tone. From Mars to Jupiter is 1/2 tone. From Jupiter to Saturn is 1/2 tone. From Jupiter to the fixed stars we have a half tone. From Saturn to the fixed stars we have a half tone. Together we have 6 tones, and that equals a full octave. And as in my Like the Goetia things, I've marked out the scientific of the tones. In December 13, 1925, Turkey passed a law, number 677, prohibiting tekkes and zeviyas, central dervish lodges, except those used as masajid. So they didn't want to completely stop the main religion. And a masajid is the Arabic for mosques, or mesquite. Also prohibited were dervish titles and the profession of tomb keeping. It's one thing, you got the graves, put the thing, but people, in America, there are actual graveyards where you can not only pay to have the tomb, we got to keep flowers or fake flowers or something on the tomb and keep it swept and, keep the graveyard mowed and all that. People have gone even further than that. You can pay somebody to cry for you at your grave.